Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the next session. In today's session, we will begin with second chapter, that is Principles of Management. In this chapter, we will be studying about Frederick Winslow Taylor and Henry Fayol's contribution towards management. Frederick Winslow Taylor is known as father of scientific management and Henry Fayol is known as father of general management. Why? Because both of them have contributed immensely towards the study of management as a discipline. F.W. Taylor, that is Frederick Winslow Taylor, was an American mechanical engineer, and Henry Fayol was a French mining engineer. Taylor gave us scientific management, and Henry Fayol gave us administrative principles, that is, 14 principles of management. Because of their immense contribution, Taylor is known as father of scientific management and Henry Fayol is known as father of general management. In this chapter, we will be studying about scientific management and 14 principles of management propounded by Taylor. Before studying these concepts, we need to understand what does principles of management means. Principles of management are general guidelines for decision making and behavior. What does it mean? We know that in an organization there will be n number of employees. Employees will be undertaking various activities of the organization. To perform these activities, there need to be decision making, and these principles of management provide guideline for decision making in an organization. For example, while deciding about promotion of an employee, one manager may consider seniority, whereas the other manager may follow the principle of merit. Now, what must be the basis for the promotion of an employee? It depends on n number of factors. This decision making will become easy by applying principles of management because they give us guideline for decision making in an organization. And principles of management, they are not rigid, they are not complicated or difficult to change as principles of pure science. Principles of management, they are flexible. Why they are flexible? Because principles of management deal with human behavior, and human behavior is not constant, it is never static, it keeps on changing, as well as technology also keeps on changing as and when changes happen in the external environment as well as in the behavior of an employee. As per those changes, the decision making in an organization will also be impacted. Hence, principles of management, they are guideline for decision making. Hence, principles of management are not rigid, they are flexible. The principles of management should be distinguished from techniques of management. We will be studying techniques of management as well in this chapter. Now, what does principles means and what does technique means? Principles are guideline for decision making or performing the actions, whereas techniques, they are not guideline, they state you the procedure, the method that must be followed to perform a task or accomplish a goal. They are not giving you guideline, they are stating the method in which the activity need to be performed. And principles should be understood as being distinct from values as well. Principles of management are distinguished from values. We know what are principles. Principles are guidelines for decision making. Whereas values, Values are something which are acceptable or desirable. Principles are basic truth or guideline for behavior, whereas values are general rules for behavior of an individual in the society. Values are formed through common practice, the practice that has been followed from n number of years, whereas principles of management, they are formed after research in work situation. But still, even though there is difference between values and principles, while practicing principles of management, values should not be neglected. Why? Because a business is operating in the society. A business is utilizing the resources of the society, men, material, machinery, money. If the business is operating, it means the society has given approval for the business for performing its activities. Hence, the principles of management should not neglect the values, should try to fulfill the social and ethical responsibility of business towards society. Next, nature of principles of management. Now, what are principles of management? They are guidelines which help us for decision making, which help us for performing actions, as well as guide the behavior of human being in an organization. Okay, they are guidelines. Now we will be studying the nature of principles of management. What are the qualities, characteristics of principles of management? We know that there are five basic functions of management: planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. These functions of management are performed on the basis of principles of management. Principles help the manager to take decisions while performing the functions of management. First feature of principles of management is universal applicability. Let it be any type of organization, business organization or non-business organization, organization under public sector or private sector, manufacturing unit or a service sector, organization operating on a small scale or larger scale. Let it be any type of organization, principles of management are applicable. How? See, we know that in first chapter we have studied. Let it be any type of organization, management is applicable. Let it be any type of organization, organization operating on a small scale, large scale, business organization, non-business organization. All of these organizations will be performing functions of management. Without planning, organizing, staffing, directing, controlling, can you perform any activity in any organization? No. Means management is there in all the type of organization. When management is there in all the type of organization, it means even principles of management is there in all the types of organization, because management and principles of management, they are indispensable. You cannot separate them. If you are performing functions of management, principles of management are providing you guideline to perform the functions of management. When management is universally applicable, even principles of management is universally applicable, because principles of management provide guideline for performing functions of management. Now, the extent of their applicability would vary depending upon the nature of organization, business activity, scale of operation. The extent of applicability would vary, but the presence of principles of management will be there. Let me take one example about the extent of their applicability. There is one principle called centralization and decentralization. There are 14 principles of management, out of which one is centralization and decentralization. What is centralization? Centralization is concentration of decision making authority, whereas decentralization is dispersal of decision making authority. Assume that there is an organization operating on a small scale. That organization, what it can do, it can adopt centralization. Why? Because the activities are performed on the small scale, all the decisions can be taken by the concerned owner or the manager himself. Whereas if the business is operating on a larger scale, then it need to work through combination of centralization and decentralization. Few routine decision making authority can be dispersed among the subordinates. Whereas if it is a managerial decision, then it need to be retained by the top management. Like this, if the organization is operating on a large scale, it will be operating through combination of centralization and decentralization. What you can observe here, that the extent of the applicability of the principles of management would vary depending upon nature of business activity performed, but the applicability of principles of management will be there. Next, general guidelines. As we have studied in the meaning itself, what are principles of management? They are general guidelines to action for decision making, but they do not provide ready-made or straight-jacket solutions to the managerial problem. Why? Because a real business situation is not static, it keeps on changing, it is complex in nature, it is dynamic. Even though the principles of management are not providing straitjacket solution, the importance of principles of management cannot be underestimated, because even a small guideline will help us to solve the problems that the organization would face. For example, assume that in an organization there is a conflict between two departments. Now the manager is supposed to overcome this problem. Principles of management will provide a guideline. How? In this situation, the manager must give emphasis on not just the departmental objective, but he need to give primary importance to the overall goals of the organization. Whatever decision the manager will be implementing, he must take care that his decision should not affect adversely the overall goals in the organization. This guideline will help the manager to resolve the problems. Formed by practice and experimentation. The principles of management are formed by experience and collective wisdom of manager along with experimentation. Let me take one example. In this chapter, we will be studying scientific management and administrative principles, 14 principles of management. Taylor gave us scientific management. How did he proposed scientific management concept? Through his experience, through his experimentation. He was working in Bethlehem Steel Company. He worked as professor in Tuck School of Business, executive at Midway Steel Company. By working in these organizations, whatever the experience that he has gained, and after conducting various experimentations as well, he came up with scientific management. Speaking about Henry Fayol was a French mining engineer. He was working as a managing director, and through his experience, he gave us 14 principles of management. Then you can say that principles of management are formed through experience and collective wisdom of managers along with experimentation. Flexible. Principles of management are not rigid prescriptions. It means principles of management, the applicability of principles of management can be changed as per the prevailing situation. They are flexible, they can be modified by the manager. For example, assume that now a business is operating on a small scale and it has adopted centralization in its business. It means all the decision making capacity is retained by the top management itself. What if the organization will be working on a large scale in future? Still it need to continue with the centralization itself? No. Principles of management are flexible. If the organization is working on centralization basis now, if the situation demands in future to work with a combination of centralization and decentralization, it can do so. Principles of management, they are not rigid, they are flexible. As per the situation, circumstances of an enterprise, the application of principles of management can be modified. Mainly behavioral. Principles of management aims at influencing the behavior of human being. Hence, principles of management are mainly behavioral in nature. When I say that principles of management are aiming to influence the behavior of human beings, it does not mean that principles do not pertain to things or phenomenon at all, but more emphasis is given to behavior of human being. Moreover, principles of management give us a better understanding about the relationship between human and material resources in an organization. Principles of management are not just relating to things or circumstance or human behavior, they give us a better understanding about the relationship between human and material resources in accomplishing the organization's purpose. For example, while planning for the layout of the factory, the orderliness would require that work flows must be matched by the flow of material and movement of men. Only through this combination, the activity at the work floor would go on smoothly. It means principles of management give emphasis on influencing human behavior, but still they pertain to things and phenomenon as well. Cause and effect relationship. Principles of management are intended to establish relationship between cause and effect. They give us understanding about what would be the effect after implementing so and so principles of management. They tell us if a particular principle of management was applied in a particular situation, what would be the likely effect. For example, unity of command is one of the principles of management. What does unity of command says? It says that one individual must have one and only one superior, or one individual must get order from one superior at a time. He must not get orders or instruction from multiple superior. This is what unity of command says. It just does not says what is the cause, but it will also tell what would be the effect as well. If unity of command is implemented, then all the activities will go on smoothly. Whereas if unity of command is violated, then what would be the effect? When instruction is given to the subordinate from more than one superior, it will lead to confusion among the subordinates. What activity need to be performed on the priority basis, and this confusion will lead to non-performance of task, and non-performance of task will affect further activities of the organizations. So all these principles of management, they are not just providing guideline. Along with providing guideline, they are explaining about the effect as well. effect of application or non-application of principles of management in an organization. Even though in real life situations are not identical, the application may vary as we have studied before. The application, the applicability, the level of applicability may vary, but these principles of management will surely provide guideline for decision making. Contingent. The application of principles of management is contingent. Contingent means dependent upon the prevailing situation at a particular point of time. The application of principles can be changed as per the requirement. Employees deserve fair and just remuneration. Now, what is this just and fair? Will be dependent upon multiple factors. It will be dependent upon the contribution of an employee in the organization, paying capacity of the employer, prevailing wage rate for the occupation. Wages, remuneration is again depended upon several factors. Like these principles of management, they provide guideline, but still they are dependent upon multiple factors, and hence we can tell that principles of management are contingent in nature. So these are the various features of principles of management.